Hello everybody. Welcome back to my channel. Today's video and Blind Woman reviews. So today I am doing another video on a shadow in the Ember, but this is the spoiler review. So if you have not read this book and you do not want spoilers, check out my previous review that I did last Sunday. Check that out. I will link it below. It'll be linked below. It'll be in one of the playlist site link because I'll be linking a couple of playlists related to this. So if you don't want any spoilers, watch that. I did do a spoiler free. I did like a broad spoiler in that one, but honestly, I feel like this whole thing has like so much in it that I kind of want to dive in because I have some predictions I want to make regarding the rest of the Blood and Ash series, since this is specifically in the world of Blood and Ash. So I am very interested, and if you just don't care about spoilers, okay, welcome anyway. And it's been like over a week. It's been a little over a week since the book came out, so I think it's perfectly okay to do spoilers. So that's why I'm doing it now and decided to do the spoiler-free reviews in the week of the release. But I feel like it's been over a week. I think it's perfectly okay for me to do spoilers now. So yeah. Anyway, in case you don't remember, let me just remind you of what the plot is of this book. But here it is. Born shrouded in the veil of the primals, a maiden as the fates promised, Seraphina Mirel's future has never been hers. Chosen before birth to uphold the desperate deal her ancestor struck to save his people, Sarah must leave behind her life and offer herself to the primal of death as his consort. However, Sarah's real destiny is the most closely guarded secret in all of Lasagna. She's not the well-protected maiden, but an assassin with one mission, one target: make the primal of death fall in love, become his weakness, and then end him. If she fails, she dooms her kingdom to a slow demise at the hands of the rot. Sarah has always known what she is: chosen, consort, assassin, weapon. A specter never fully formed, yet drenched in blood. A monster. Until the primal of death's unexpected words and deeds chase away the darkness gathering inside her, and his seductive touch ignites a passion she's never allowed herself to feel and cannot feel for him. But Sarah has never had a choice. Either way, her life is forfeit. It always has been, as she has been forever touched by life and death. So, you know kind of how I feel about this book already. So, like, if you've watched my spoiler-free review, if you've actually watched this spoiler-free review, you know exactly how I feel about about this about this book. You know that I gave this book 5 stars. There are so many good things about this book that I have discussed in my spoiler-free review, but now I just want to go spoilers so I can dive into some of the things I mentioned. One of the things I mentioned is, like, for example, that I see a lot of similarities between Castile and Nyktos. And I want to dive into that because I did not dive into that in my spoiler-free review, because I feel like it would be kind of, it wouldn't be fully spoilery, but honestly, I just want to point them out a little sometimes, and things like that. And I just want to talk about this book because this book is awesome. So I kind of already told you the beginning of this book, but just a refresher. There is like a prologue, basically, where in the prologue we have Sarah getting ready, and she's 17 at this time, and she is getting ready to give herself up to the primal of death in order to, be his consort. And she's very nervous about it, but she's like, she knows what she has to do. She's been trained for it her whole life. Like, there was a knight and everything that personally oversaw her training so that she was prepared for this, so that she could basically kill him. She knows what to do. She has been trained for all of it. And she's ready. Her mom is there. Everything, her family in general are there. The only one person that is basically an asshole is Tabius, her stepbrother, who is technically heir to the kingdom. Because nobody knows who she is in the kingdom. Nobody knows that she is the last of the Murel bloodline and all that stuff. So they go to the temple where the shadow priests basically, summon the primal of death, and she sits there in the consort's throne, and he comes, and everybody's in a corner. And what's very interesting about this is honestly the rejection in this thing at first is just impressive. And that is a simple thing that he just literally approached her, and nobody heard what he said, and nobody knows what happens. But he specifically says to her, "I have no need for a consort." And then he leaves her, confused and rejected. And I was just like, oh, Niktos? What? And I remember when I read it, I was just kind of like, okay, interesting. He rejected her. This is an interesting thing that he rejected her only to later fall in love with her. I thought it was an interesting little premise, because I'm like, okay, he rejected her, but then he falls in love with her, and then maybe he wonders why he rejected her. But no, it's actually a little bit different, and I just kind of liked it. And then the queen, her mother, slaps her by saying, you failed. And after that, it becomes like her life becomes basically a bit of a mess. The story starts off 3 years later in the first chapter. Nobody still knows who she is, but now she's kind of known as the queen's handmaiden. And there's someone's trying to form a deal with they're trying to form a deal with a kingdom so that they could feed their people, but the lord that speaks for the crown of the Vodina Isles basically says no, and but he insinuates that he'll be able to convince the crown if Sarah is given to him, I guess, in a way. So Sarah is now is basically after that sent to send a message, and that is to kill him as well as the other lords that came along with him and everybody else, and have the ship go back to the Vodina Isles. And basically it is sent as a message because they also as a gift, in a way you can say, or as a message really, the Lord of the Vodina Isles gave them the head of their advisor that went to try to procure this deal. After, though, she just stays out, and we learn that after her rejection by Niktos, her life has kind of gotten worse. Every year she's basically taken to the temple. She sits there And apparently in the 3 years that he comes, the shadow priest supposedly summoned the god, but he never shows up. So every time there's a her life has gotten progressively worse though, because they used to still bring her like meals to her room. And by the way, also, unlike the rest of the royal family, she has no guards to protect her. She has no knight. She has nothing, right? But basically, she used to be brought meals and everything. And as the years continue, though, they became less and less. And then 6 months earlier, after her 20th birthday, after the last time they tried, they just stopped bringing her meals. Now she has to kind of just go into the kitchen. There's like a small window in the kitchen, and take leftovers from the kitchen and eat whatever she can, because nobody's really feeding her, and she's just kept there and just basically at the queen's beck and call almost. And she watches the people suffering, and the rot has basically gone further. That very night after she kills these people, she witnesses gods killing a brother and sister and also a baby. She witnesses this goddess and these like two gods as they commit murder. And she's about to go in, but someone stops her and pulls her away from it and is like, what are you doing? Like, what the hell are you doing, right? And she finds out there's a god, but she doesn't really know his name by this point. And this is when it started first reminding me of Castile in a way, of Castile and Poppy, but not as much. So in order to hide her and for them to distract them out of necessity, the god asks Sarah to kiss him. And she enjoys it a lot. Like, they are actually just enjoying it, even though they're doing it out of necessity. This kind of reminds me of the fact that they kissed right away in From Blood and Ash. It wasn't necessarily necessity that made it happen, but Castile and Poppy basically kissed the very night they first met. Mainly because Castile thought she was someone else, but then after, he just kissed her because she wanted to. And I thought that was kind of an interesting little nod. We have a bunch of nods to Poppy and Castile. Like, a lot of the dynamic between Sarah and Niktos is kind of a Castile and Poppy type dynamic, where they have a similar dynamic sense. And it's kind of interesting, kind of cool. I will say that I did enjoy it a lot. Getting that kind of dynamic. They're very, like, for example, they can be very cheesy. They can have like a lot of cute banter. And it's amazing. So after they basically review, like, they search the house to find out who these people were and why that happened. We find out that in the last 4 months, the same gods have killed about 7 people. But this is like the first baby that they killed, and that he's trying to figure out why these gods are killing these mortals. And it turns out that one of them was actually a friend of his. And Sarah kind of gets to know him a little bit. And it turns out, he is not like a couple of the other gods. And one of the things that also happens, they meet a second time again when she's out, because nobody really cares what she does. She's just like there to. She's just like according to the queen, and even Tavius, she failed at what she was supposed to do, but they also don't know what exactly happened. So she ends up just doing whatever she wants, usually sometimes leaving at night, getting pleasure from wherever she can. And when she leaves one of the nights, she senses when someone died or is dying. So she enters the house, but she doesn't search or find out who's there. But then, Niktos comes out, and he she stabs him because she doesn't realize who he is. And she has like a shadow stone dagger, which is not meant to be in the mortal world. This is when he destroys it. She's like, and there's like a point where I really like where she's like, "You owe me a shadow stone dagger." Like, she realizes there are points where she can be afraid of what he might do to her because she knows he's a god and she should be more respectful, but she can't usually hold back, and she's extremely reckless, which reminds me a little bit of Poppy in the fact that she doesn't always hold back, like in From Blood and Ash when she smiled at the Duke knowing that he could technically kill her. Um, Also that he could, he could do that, and she knows this, but she like he could technically not kill her, I'm sorry, but he will whip her when she smiled at him in a certain way. Sometimes she can't hold back and been like when she talks to him or other people, knowing that there are consequences. That's something that's kind of like a Poppy related thing that comes into with Sarah. So that is another thing. And honestly, I think also Sarah does make a bunch of crazy, stupid decisions. But honestly, normalize making stupid decisions. It's fun. It's really fun to read when characters make stupid decisions. I don't know. I've heard like people complain about it that she makes stupid decisions, but honestly, she does probably. But it's actually really cool. So normalize it. One of my favorite parts is like they have like 3 meetings before she ends up officially as his consort. And basically in it's I believe it's like in the second or third meeting where she finally asks his name, and he says that his name is Ash. We At first I really thought, I'm like, okay, why is his name Ash? Like, it reminded me of how um when he introduced himself, Castile gave the name Hawk to so that nobody, so it's like it's gonna be like that one name that he gave as his name was Hawk as a guard, Hawk Flynn. It reminded me of that, but it's like she's just calling him Ash. The third time they meet, though, is also the first time there's any type of smut in the fantasy. And basically they meet in a lake. She didn't realize anyone was there, and it was like her lake, and she ends up like going into this lake, and she ends up just like diving into the lake and taking off her clothes, and he kind of saw her naked, and then eventually she saw him, and then she's like, "What the hell are you doing here in my lake?" And she's like, "Your lake?" And it's like, yeah. Like, it was a very interesting thing. And then they kind of talk, and there's a little bit of smut there in the simple fact. There's also a bit of a fight with these creatures that come out, but yeah, it was a very interesting thing because there is a little bit of smut, and he's the one that kind of pleases her, and he finds out how she likes certain things. So I found that I like smut in fantasy. It's cool, especially as a thing, but their banter was so much better. So while all of this is happening, and while she's kind of enjoying her life with Ash, she does do other things like continuing to train. There's even one part where her stepsister Ezra, also known as Esmeria, she's like one of the princesses, and she's like, Ezra is awesome. Like, Ezra should just be protected and loved because she's awesome. But she asks her to help her with this thing that she has. Basically, she helps the Ladies of Mercy, which are these women that basically take care of the children, kind of like an orphanage almost. And basically there's a girl managed to escape her father, who was basically really abusive and neglectful, and he forces he forces people to do what he wants, such as women to be courtesans, as they're known in the thing, but mainly sex workers. He basically forces them into the sex trade, and she pretends to be someone who's interested in it, and then she kills him, and she gets the little girl's brother back, and tries to get him out because the basically the lady wrote to Ezra asking her to help her get, because there's a kid, and basically, like, to help him, she feels like, he might be making him steal and do other things in order to survive, and also that dad is an alcoholic, so also to fill out his to fill his cups, basically. And then she kills him, and she gets the kid, telling him that he's taking a nap. And what's very funny is that there's another girl there who basically has signs of having like been hit by him. And when she kills him, she takes the coins, the money that he has, like, thank you for these, and just gives it to the girl, and it's like, get out of here. And it's just like, don't go in there, like, don't worry about it, just go. And the girl just left, and then the siblings were reunited. But that's one of the things that she does, along with also helping a couple some of the people that are like basically being affected by the rot, like taking food to them sometimes. Other times she helps Ezra, like, with, like, there's, like, a healer, I think. They were helping the healer. So she does a couple of things for her, a few things for her people that go kind of unnoticed by other people in the book, which I think is cool. But the story really begins a lot, in chapter 1 when the mystery comes up. So this mystery element that I never mentioned in my spoiler-free review. But it also comes up when her stepfather, the king, dies. And Tavius is meant to ascend the throne. And he basically sneaks into her room, takes her new Shadowstone dagger that Nyktos did give her. He actually did give her a Shadowstone dagger as a gift, which I thought was actually really cool that he actually gave that to her again, because, like, that was, like, the one dagger that she had. Another thing that actually reminds me a lot about Poppy when it comes to Sarah is that both of them feel comfortable carrying a weapon, and they feel more comfortable when they carry a weapon. Both of them actually sleep with a dagger under their pillows, which I thought was really awesome. I don't know how else to say that. Like, I feel like it's just cool. So they both have that, and they also both tend to sheathe their daggers on their thighs. That's another little quirky thing. So I feel very, very unusually, like, proud about that. I don't know. It's really awesome. And then, of course, they Tavius meant to ascend the throne, but he now, he basically is, he's on top of her. He eventually, like, says all this stuff, and he takes her to this place in order to basically humiliate her, because the entire time she has sort of been humiliating him, because he and basically besting him at everything. So he is about to whip her, and he starts doing so. Another reminder of Blood and Ash when it comes to the Duke, but I feel almost worse. And he literally says, "You have to do now whatever I want because now I'm king," and that is one of my favorite scenes in the story. Really comes up, and that is when Nyktos makes this entrance, this really awesome entrance, like the ground rumbles and everything, and it's like they've already realized that God is like, "Who are you?" And he's like, "I am ruler of the Asher," which is why they call, he's called Ash, and like primal of death and common endings, Nyktos. And it's like everybody now has to kind of kneel, and she's still there, like, kind of like with tied up, and she was being whipped and all that stuff. And he's like, he literally tells him, "You hurt what is mine." And he starts killing the guards. And I was just like, whoa, like, this is just so cool. I was having so much fun. And then, of course, because the woman does not care about her own daughter, Sarah's mother starts begging for Tavius' life because he's a king. He's the king, right? And by the way, this is another time that it reminded me a lot of Castillo, but I'm going to talk about it in a little bit. But basically, she starts begging for his life, and you get Ezra. No, he is a monster. He deserves to die. And I'm like, yes, he does. He does deserve to die. He does deserve to die. And he deserves all that. Like, Ezra, you're the only one speaking common sense, and you just have the queen. But he's the king. It's like, and Nick was just like about to kill him, and then Sarah just stops him, and he's like, "You're begging for his life," and she's like, "I don't beg for his life," and she basically cuts off his hands, and I think she even stabs him. I think probably on the at some point, maybe on the heart, and then she takes the whip and she forces it down his mouth, and he dies, and then she tells Ezra to take the throne. And then, of course, she argues with Nyktos, asking, like, you told me your name was Ash. And he's like, oh, yeah, people do call me Ash. Oh, and by the way, he's also there with a couple of other gods. Sion, I think, is there, and a couple of others. And it's very interesting. I got reminded of Castillo so much because he is very much, if anyone hurts Poppy, he doesn't care. He doesn't care about anyone. He doesn't care about second chances. The person that hurts Poppy is basically dead. Like, very much dead. That's where Nyktos reminds me so much of Poppy. Like, he doesn't care about second chances. He doesn't care about any of that crap when it comes to Poppy. They're dead. There's a scene in A Kingdom of Flesh and Fire where this guy, Landell, is kind of like giving his point of view and saying, that he, the people don't know her, this and that. And there's a point where he's like, I'll never like give my, allegiance to, or like, or be willing to listen to this scar-faced bitch, as he calls her. And Poppy flinches, and he's like, it would have been just fine if you like spoke out your thoughts and said, what, and spoke your mind. I would have been just fine with that. But then you insulted her and made her flinch. Now you have to die, basically. And he basically took out the guy's heart. And one of my favorite parts about this one scene where Nyktos is killing everybody because they hurt her. They hurt Sarah, is he says, she asks me not to kill you, but when you die, I'll have your soul for an eternity to do whatever I want with. I was so into this. I was just really into this. I was like, I love it so much. And then he takes her, because he wasn't planning to take her as his consort. He's like, now we're actually forced to do it, because now that she killed an heir, she technically could suffer execution and all that stuff. And she goes with him because now they actually have to fulfill this deal. And we find out, that there are like the things are very different from Lasagna, and the way that people are treated are also very different. Like, there's really no staff in Nyktos' palace. They kind of just choose to be there. Like, he doesn't make them be there. They choose to be there. They choose to serve him. And the people of Leaf, which is where he lives, are also very well protected and also very well provided for. And there are mortals as well as gods there that are very happy to serve him. And also, this is where we meet Nektas. And we meet the Draken, and I love them. They're so cool. I love their history, which is basically like they were all dragons, but then there's some that got given like mortal form. It was really interesting. One of the primals gave them mortal form, and it was just kind of cool. I really loved it. I loved learning about them. I loved meeting Reaver and Jadis as children, because Jadis is mentioned at the end of The Crown of Gilded Bones as basically, I think it's Iris woke her to go with him to the mortal world for some reason, and Nektas doesn't know why, but he hasn't seen Jadis along with Iris. but they know like that they know they're in the mortal world, but he hasn't seen his daughter. And Poppy basically is like, yeah, I'm gonna try to find them, and he tells them exactly where Iris is. But yeah, so Jadis is mentioned, so it was kind of cool meeting her as like a 4 or 5 year old, and how she basically is like, she likes like she let Poppy pet her and everything, and she likes she also likes Niktos, and how she climbs into his lap and everything. And she's basically a kid, and Reaver is kind of like learning to fly, and when Poppy kind of meets him, and he's like 10 years old, and and they play together. It's so adorable. So now that she is in the Shadowlands and protected now as Niktos' consort, is when we kind of start finding out a couple of different things. And also when their chemistry gets developed a little bit more, because their banter and chemistry, beautiful. And in order to keep her safe, Niktos gives her a bunch of rules. Like, there may be unwanted visitors on specific times. They're unpredictable. Stay in your chambers, which makes her sad. And we also find out that Niktos can read emotions and comes from his mother's bloodline. Poppy can read emotions too. Oh my gosh, the family resemblance is beautiful. And we have that, and like, she's like, why does that make you sad or whatever? And she doesn't say anything about it, but she also doesn't want to always stay in her chambers or in the library or like, and everything like that. But there's even a point where she gets jealous over this primal because she's touching Niktos, even though she knows that she has to technically kill him to save her kingdom. And she kind of unintentionally goes to these woods that she's not supposed to go into, and her life is pretty much in danger. She accidentally also even she even accidentally woke a bunch of entombed gods, and now he does save her. Niktos does save her. He's like, why did you do here? He's like, I didn't mean to come here. It was completely unintentional. And he finds out that she was jealous. And it was a very interesting scene. And they get to know each other, basically. And she's kind of struggling with the knowledge that she has to kill him to protect her kingdom. And she doesn't want to do it every time. Especially when there was a night where they slept kind of like in the balcony in the daybed. And Nektas kind of approaches along with Jadis, and it's like, you've actually given him peace. I'm thinking of calling you one of mine because you actually gave him peace. And you can see how much the people actually really love Niktos. And it's kind of interesting, and she gets to see this too. Eventually, though, Niktos does find out what Poppy's plan is because of for reasons I cannot quite remember right now. And she does find out, and she's like, she does explain that, like, she finds out that it comes up, but she also finds out that at some point that technically he did not make that deal. The one that made that deal was actually her father. And we also find out that Niktos was not supposed to be primal of death. He was supposed to be primal of life. But that basically the brother, the original primal of life's brother, Colas, I think is his name, was basically very much jealous of his brother, because his brother, as the primal of life, was very much liked by mortals, while he was mainly respected, and that's it. And he just respected as a primal of death. And he ended up making his brother the primal of death, but barely. Because what ends up happening is that he saw this woman, Zutoria, that he really liked. There was actually a legend about this that came up, and basically he saw her once and he fell in love with her. At some point she dies, and he asks his brother to bring her back, but he refuses because there, he has brought people back to life, but there are certain rules that he follows. And basically he out of that, when he ends up of jealousy and out of the fact that he refused to do this, Colas ends up making Nyctos' father Primal of Death and him becoming Primal of Life. But the thing is that both of them still have an Ember of their original powers, and they end up like it ends up that he basically just there are two Primal of Deaths ruling, and that's not supposed to happen. And he ends up bringing back Zutoria, and she ends up being very unhappy because he took away her peace. And when she dies again, the only way that the Primal of Death, the now Primal of Death, not Colas, could protect her is by basically giving her eternal reincarnation. And basically now Zutoria reincarnates and he can't find her. And also, but Nyctos does not know why he made a deal with the king of Lasagna. And it turns out we find out a lot of things throughout the books. But it's so awesome because now what I like about this one in reverse to like From Blood and Ash is the simple fact that it wasn't Sarah who was betrayed, but it was Nyctos who was betrayed by Sarah. So we see Sarah facing the repercussions of her lies. And I think that is actually very exciting. So it's one of the things I genuinely like a lot about this book. I also really like how at the end she was going to get kidnapped and taken to to Colas, and eventually, of course, Nyctos comes in and he's like, the gods are like, we had no choice. And it turns out the gods that were killing the people, the mortals, were basically looking for her. And I think it was one of Cressa basically was like, we had no choice, and I like Nyctos. Of course, you had a choice. You chose wrong, and he just kills all the gods. It was very interesting. But basically, then we meet Penelope, which is who Poppy is named for, and we find out about the prophecy that was actually mentioned in From Blood and Ash, in the Crown of Gilded Bones. And basically, and it gives us kind of like a nod to what's going to happen in the Blood and Ash series a little bit, and also how the prophecy that was mentioned seems to be in the Crown of Gilded Bones. That prophecy seems to be incomplete because half of it is about Nyctos and Sarah. And I love it. This stuff is awesome. And we also find out that Sarah is actually is technically Zutoria. She is the reincarnation of Zutoria. So that's why Cole is kind of looking for her. But also because technically she is the new primal of life, and two primals of death cannot rule. We even find out as well that the deal that he made was really to protect the deal that his father made was really to protect Nyctos. But apparently there's a lot more to Nyctos. It looks like he was captured by Colas, and I would love to find out more about that in the next book. There's so much. And we find out that the rot was really, even if he kept the deal, the rot wasn't going to go away from the kingdom. But the reason that the rot is happening in the hard climates is because there are two primals of death ruling technically, and it all happens to do because of Colas. So none of it was really Nyctos' fault. And if Sarah would have killed him, technically she wouldn't have helped her kingdom at all, and her life would have been forfeit for nothing. So those are my spoilers on this book. I love this. It was so interesting to talk about and read all this stuff and get so many nods to the Blood and Ash series. Honestly, I'm really predicting, just a short form, I'm really predicting that in Blood and Ash there will be a point, maybe the 4th or 5th book. I don't think the 6th. I don't think in the 6th this will happen, but maybe the 4th or 5th book, that we will meet Sarah, and we will meet Sarah, and she will she will basically talk about that prophecy and what is and what isn't in that prophecy and what is meant to happen, honestly, and how it's supposed to be. How you know what the prophecy really means, which was discussed at the end of this book. I really feel like that's something that's going to happen, and maybe Nyktos will meet Castile and help him out in one way or another, because honestly I think they're very similar in character. Their dynamic is similar. They're both super cheesy. Like there's like they're both like super cheesy when it comes to complimenting Poppy and Sarah respectively. They're very, very cheesy when it comes to that, and it's like it's cute, it's adorable, and I love it. So I feel like they are going to meet again. I feel like Nick Tozen will meet his granddaughter again, but I think this time it could be like it might be with Sarah, and they might talk about what the prophecy is, and maybe they'll even help them in one way or another. Who knows? Maybe the gods will wake up again, but I don't know. But I feel like they'll definitely meet. The prophecy will definitely be discussed, and maybe Jadis will come, or Jadis will might be dead, which is really sad for Nektas. But I genuinely feel like there is so much that could happen, and I think that this series definitely gave us hints to, this first book definitely gave us hints to what will happen in the rest of the Blood and Ash series, which is why I'm actually very excited to continue reading. I'm really excited for the War of Two Queens, and I'm really, really, really excited for whatever the second book is in this series. I predict that there is something that's going to happen, because there's a there was a possibility in that prophecy that Poppy would Sarah would die because of something that happened, because she took Nyktos' blood in hers, and he was desperate to try to protect her, which I thought was very sweet. And I feel like that's going to come up a lot more in the second book. I feel like we're going to get more information about Colas and maybe even Lasagna in the second book. I'm super excited. There's so much that could happen, but like right now my mind is racing to try to figure this out. So those are my thoughts on like my spoiler thoughts on all this stuff. This is my spoiler summary, and in general, there's so much that can happen. It's fun. It's great. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know what you think about the fact that I did 2 reviews, and the fact that I split them into spoiler free and spoilers. And yeah, subscribe if you're interested in more content from me. Like my video, and come back tomorrow for a review on a short story collection. I review tomorrow will be November 1st, so I would be reviewing Lips Touched 3 Times by Laini Tailor, which is it's 3 stories about it's like a collection of 3 stories, and you'll see that soon. Anyway, I'll see you tomorrow. Until then, consume stories. Bye.